Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of AI Security Ops with Black Hills Information Security. As usual, I have my illustrious companions, Derek Banks and Bronwyn Aker, with me, ready to engage in some fun AI talk, as we normally do. Unfortunately, somebody allowed Brian Furman, Dr. Brian Furman, to actually take some PTO and vacation time. Not necessarily in that order. I don't know who authorized that. And so we're going to have those privileges promptly removed. Anyway, this episode is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security. If you have an interest in getting an AI security assessment in your organization, please visit us at blackhillsinfosec.com and click on the Contact Us link, and we will happily engage in a conversation with you to see if your needs fit our talents and see if we can actually help you out. Okay, this week we are going to be talking about news stories, and the very first news story on the list is a bit of a survey from Project Liberty talking about AI's shift to the intimacy economy. Now, this is kind of a fun little story that talks about kind of the state of AI and how many of us in the United States actually have some sort of familiarity about AI, and it talks about the various aspects of AI. So the first stat for your edification and amusement is the statement that 1 in 20 Americans, that is 5% of the population, is unaware of artificial intelligence. That number actually, I think, is rather interesting. It shows to me the absolute penetration of what has happened in the last couple of years of this technology. I mean, what do you folks think about that, Mr. Banks and Miss Aker?
Go for it, Derek.
Go first.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. I am, and I'm not surprised at how low that number is because, well, for one thing, pretty much anyone who interacts with software is having AI shoved down their throat whether they want it or not. And matter of fact, I recently decided to save some money and I canceled my Adobe Cloud account because every time I open any Adobe product, I've got, it's like, I'm back in the 90s and with all the pop-up windows, only now it's use this new feature, use this new AI. AI can make your life better. It's like, whoa, all I want to do is like edit this glitch out of an image, okay? So I expect that the people who haven't heard about AI are probably people who aren't connected, don't use the internet, aren't on social media, and that would explain the low number.
And that life is probably very happy and peaceful.
Ignorance is bliss. I kid you not.
I'm about to buy a house there. Wherever
Well,
that is.
yeah, and actually, you do raise another interesting point, and that is the number's probably lower than that because many of us are using AI that is now embedded into various applications and aspects of different applications that we're using, whether they be browser-based or more heavyweight applications or mobile-based. AI has become very pervasive in a lot of technologies at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I still I question the number, not just because, like, okay, what do you know about AI, right? I know that a lot of people are talking about it. It's probably where at least 10% of that 95% is, right? I question, the question. Like,
I question the
you
question
heard
as
about
well.
AI? I sure have, right? I mean, okay, well,
okay.
but
It
I mean,
was Pew Research. Pew usually does surveys pretty well.
sure, I didn't.
Yeah, I
don't
question the research
disagree.
though because it will be biased by the perception of am I using AI buried within an app, or am I using AI directly via a chat interface? They kind of need to qualify that. So I want to move on. But
Wait. I wanted to make a point though.
Okay,
on that.
Derek,
Like,
please make your point.
What do they use AI for? Well, yes, it is getting shoved into everything, and I think that that's actually to a benefit because, like what Bronwyn just said, the features of photos of essentially, the Photos app for Apple has essentially replaced Lightroom for me because they have an AI editing thing where I can just do what I need to, and they don't shove it all in my face, right? So essentially, it's replaced the features of Lightroom where I can still look for people like facial recognition. It's all built in now, right? Same thing with like Logic Pro for one of my hobbies, right? Like I use AI to essentially take a recorded track and then split out all the instruments, I mean, it's super handy. So I'm using AI, but it is vastly different than like using AI for what I'm doing for work, right? So
Right. Right, and that's that's the challenge. Well, actually, you really when I said move on, I was really moving on to what are people using it for, which is the
there
next
we go.
question in this little survey, which is a great segue. And I think it sort of gets to what we were hitting at. Like it's saying here, 60% of adults use AI for online searching, which is why it poses a threat to Google's traditional search business. Now, I find that particular quote kind of laughable because if you actually pay attention to what Google is doing, their search business is now just purely an AI model. So I think people just haven't sort of cottoned on to that necessarily. But the next most common use, though, I think was something that we're all very, very familiar with, and that is using AI, presumably chat interfaces. It kind of puts color on the first question that we asked, to come up with ideas. And I think for almost all of us in knowledge worker occupations, especially, AI as a brainstorming kind of companion is a very, very common use. I would agree with that. I use it in the same way. What about you guys?
yeah, I'm going to be, was it pedantic? Because that's my role here, right? To come up with ideas. Well, so I generally have the idea. I just want it to get me a starting point and save like an hour, right? Like I come with the idea and I get this AI thing to get me on down the road. Like, for example, I want to do a thing at work. It's a discrete task, and we'll get to like what are people using it for here in a minute. I want to do this thing at work, so I go put in exactly what I want to get done. I had the idea, and now I'm getting the time saving aspect there. So instead of coming up with ideas, I'm going to say helping me refine my ideas is probably more.
So, Derek, I'm baffled. You mean you don't come in the morning at 8 a.m. and go, "Dear AI, I'm a cybersecurity analyst and researcher. What should my job be today?"
That's next year. That's 2027. This is, or 2026 rather. It's next year.
Yes.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with your assertion. You normally go to it with the semblance of an idea and use it as a brainstorming buddy of sorts, right?
I think that's what they mean, though, right?
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, when I'm working on a new talk or a new article, I use different AIs for different things. So Perplexity, it's an answer engine. So I'll use it to do more research type stuff to look for information to help inform whatever harebrained notion I'm trying to expand upon. And then I'll use Claude or ChatGPT to work on the actual word smithing. And if there's code involved, then I'm usually using Claude because Claude does code better than most of the other AIs I've worked with, or chatbots, I should say. So there's so many tools are everywhere. The thing that upsets me though about this kind of question, what are you using it for, and are you using it? We've actually been using AI in the broader sense for decades.
True.
And
There's two of them. Yeah.
the autocomplete in anything is technically AI.
Sure it is. Yeah.
And the algorithms, all of that.
We actually, I'm glad you said that. We teach that in our class, especially if you encompass like machine learning into that kind of thing. I mean, the math has been around for a lot of this stuff in some cases, and Bayesian statistics since the 1800s, like the late 1800s, right? And so I would agree with you. We've been using the AI for a long time. I mean, in 2007, the rise of social media, it's all powered by recommender algorithms. That's like what it does, right?
Yeah, that's what it does. So here's the question I actually really want to get to that's got pertinent information security risk around it, amongst other questions in here. But it is the question, how are people using AI at work? And the Pew Research found that 21% of US workers are using AI at least some part of their work. What that means to me is that people in their occupations, probably as knowledge workers, are providing data into the AI as part of their daily jobs at work. Does that mean that they're using public AI and not internal organizationally licensed AI?
Joff.
What are the ramifications, right? There's data leakage that might be happening here already, and I think we can assume that people are not thinking about it. And I will say, do organizations actually have a policy handle on this yet?
That's what I was going to say, is that I am sure that every single one of those organizations has already come up with an AI policy usage policy for their employees, right?
Are you being sarcastic?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. Like when people like talk about like risks of AI, like I always I like the doomsayer, like, AI is gonna kill all of humanity. I'm like, well, I'm probably a little bit more worried about data leaking at work, or maybe like job loss or something before Skynet.
Well, let's just be really specific here. If you are using a product on the internet and that product says, I am free, most of the time in our collective experience, and I'm pretty sure my colleagues here would agree with me, it means that the data you supply to that product is the payment. In other words,
say, congratulations, you're now participating in surveillance capitalism.
That's right. So if you, and I want people to hear me very clearly here, if you are using free ChatGPT, for example, at work, and you are putting sensitive work data into that, you are providing them data to train future models more than likely. You need to check your local organizational policies or make sure that you have a commercial account subscription or whatever. You could get yourself into deep, deep trouble. Make sure you understand this. Okay. All right. Now I've done the dad speech.
Public service announcement for today.
Public service announcement. Yes.
Well, okay, let's take it back to a cybersecurity stance. Forever, we've always had issues with shadow technology. And now we have this additional dimension of not just shadow tech in that people are installing applications on their systems. Now they're using these other third-party LLMs, chatbots, whatever. And it's intensifying and expanding on areas where we're already challenged as is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree it is a risk, but also, I mean, it's a volume thing too. When you talk about training a large language model, like you'd have to put a lot of data, exfiltrate a lot of data out of your organization through those prompts for it to significantly impact the training of the next model. That said, also flaws are important, right? Like the whole like Google indexing shared chats kind of thing. So, I mean, on the one hand, from a statistic point of view, sure, it's probably not that big of a deal volume-wise, but you never know what happens on the configuration end. And then I also worry about like just not knowing what stuff does. Like I put a browser extension in and it's sending out, data to an LLM, like Grammarly, right? Or something along those lines. And I think that's, broader than AI. Right? When you click on something in a web app and it opens up Pandoc or whatever, and you see your document, like where does that data really go? And so, but I think that's a battle that most organizations are currently fighting, like sprawl of techno sprawl or something like that.
Yeah, there's data leaking all over the place, frankly. But I'm going to
jump. You don't have to help it leak.
Yeah, help it leak. I'm going to jump forward to another question, which I think is also pertinent to information security. On this research survey, and that is, will AI make us less safe and our data less private? And the response for most of the people surveyed here found that 80% of U.S. adults in their sample believe that the federal government should maintain rules of AI safety and data security. And only 9% of the respondents believe the government should prioritize developing capability, even if it means relaxing safety and data security rules. So there, at least according to Pew Research, there is widespread concern about safety and security as it relates to data. So there's some awareness there.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the information from this research is the exact opposite of what the government has done recently. It's asking for more guidance, more structure, and of course, what we've been doing recently, at least in the U.S., is less oversight, less regulation, less transparency.
I mean, I guess there's a part of me though that was it Ronald Reagan that said the scariest words in the English language is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Right? Like, what are they going to do to regulate AI that would also allow us to keep a competitive advantage? Because I do believe we are in competition with China to develop the best AI on the planet. So I guess, if I had to pick a camp, and I'm going to hate to say this, I don't think I'm in the 80% where I want government to come save me. Because I think the cat's out of the bag, right? Like, I don't know what they would do at this point that would not hamper, R&D and development efforts. I think if I had to pick one, I don't think these are mutually exclusive things, but if I had to pick, I'm in the 9% that says, I don't know, let's hit the accelerator and see where this thing lands. Because
and if we're talking about legislative guidance, I lean towards the idea that anything put in place needs to be more along the lines of market incentives to steer technology roughly in the right direction without laying down specifics, right? And I'll put this more succinctly because I love this word. I would love to see incentives to further prevent the continuing shitification of the internet.
Little Cory Doctorow for you there, huh?
Yeah, a little Cory. Throwing a little Cory out there. Because
I think the cat's out of the bag too, though.
I am. I'm getting a little worried about how many burning dumpsters are floating across my web pages.
I think I've just gotten numb to it.
I think what's going to happen in the long run is kind of similar to what happened when the web was first released and out of the bag, is that as people find legitimate use cases, there will be higher and higher value placed on human-generated anything, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's analyses. Yeah, we can use the tools, but ultimately, I think that in the long run, the ease with which we can create junk stuff will make human-generated content and information and products all that much more valued because it involves more labor. It involves someone who has a pulse. I think that's going to be an outcome in the long run. How long it's going to take for us to get there, I don't know. But in the meantime,
I just want to. I'd like to give Bronwyn Aker the Optimism of the Day award for that. I appreciate that glowing level of optimism. Normally, I'm the most optimistic person on this show.
In the long run, I agree with Bronwyn, but I think the next couple of years are going to be a real bumpy ride.
Yes,
I agree. No, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But as with all things, there will be a pendulum swing. Right now, we're going hard over to the enshittification factor, but eventually it will come back, and then 30 years or so from now, it'll be pretty much hammered out.
I'm hoping like 4 or 5 years from now, because 30 years from now, it's going to be
that's
way
optimistic.
past my shelf life.
Okay,
right?
Well, first of all, 30 years from now, unless I'm extremely good in the longevity department, I don't think I'm going to be around. So I don't.
Well, I
think
hope
I'm
you
gonna
are,
care.
Joff. Maybe we'll be sitting on the porch, like talking back in my day, the AI did this. We'll be like, Futurama.
I'll be right there at 89 years old, going, "Hey, Derek, I dropped my beer. Give me another one."
That's right.
All right, let's go on to the second story, which actually scares the shit out of me more and more.
Well, it kind of
And
goes
that
along
is-
with what I was just saying about the bumpy ride, right?
Well, right. This is the perfect segue of bumpy ride. We have seen in the technology industry this year a number of layoffs in quantities that are in excess of 1,000 in most cases, and in most cases have been directly ascribed to the gains in efficiency from strategically leveraging artificial intelligence. And the latest one of these is Amazon, which has decided to cut 14,000 corporate jobs amid AI investment. That literally is the headline. It doesn't get more real than this. The same thing happened during the summer with Microsoft.
Accenture did too.
Accenture, yeah. Are these companies making a mistake?
I think so. I think that they're using AI as a justification to just slash jobs and increase their bottom lines without actually knowing what it is that they're saying or caring. And it's not just the 14,000 for Amazon. According to another set of articles that I didn't share the link with you because I remembered it and I had to look it up. Nearly 50,000 tech jobs have been lost in 2025. And that's including Intel, Peloton, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon. All of these knowledge workers of various kinds have been laid off. And AI is being used as an excuse. And personally, I don't believe it. I don't believe it because I work with AI all the time, and it can do a lot for task acceleration, but not always. Vibe coding, they've now got people are being hired to find all of the problems with vibe coded programs because the code is so bad because of people using the AIs to generate this vibe coded content. They don't know basic programming fundamentals, so they can't double check whether or not the code is stable, valid, or if it even works.
Yeah. Look,
so yeah.
my view on the matter is this: we are in a technology paradigm shift where we are moving up the stack again to yet more capability. And coding is a classic example of this, right? Where we can low code, no code, vibe code applications using AI models. I think, in an optimistic sense, that there is going to be an explosion of economic growth out of this technology, and what's going to happen is that we will all retask ourselves into different roles to feed that explosive growth. We are just in the inflection point right now, which feels very, very painful because it's making the turn, right? And making the turn has never been easy with a paradigm shifting change. So that's my kind of view on the thing. Derek, what's your thoughts?
So I kind of agree and disagree with what some of y'all said. I know it's shocking, right, that I might disagree. So I think there's some truth to what Brian was saying is that that companies, they may be using the opportunity as use that excuse, right? And that may be some truth to it, but also I do think that we're just seeing kind of like the tip of the iceberg in a lot of ways, because I feel like I feel like just IT and coding and knowledge workers in the IT space, they're going to be the canary in the coal mine, in my opinion, because AI came from that realm, right? And I do a whole lot of vibe coding, right? And I do know some coding, right? I know Joff likes to tell us stories about how I don't call him anymore. It's true, but I also became I think I became a better coder too. And I just, I use AI for a lot of it. I'm also not putting out production, code, that I have to really worry about the security. But I guess what I'm saying is I think that it's not really an excuse more than the people at the the top management, so to speak, at these companies are kind of like seeing the writing on the wall, right? Seeing the direction like that things are going, and they're making a move before they're like behind, I guess is what I'm saying. And then looking at other like industries, like I saw a chart the other day, like one of those box violin type charts. And I don't know how true it was, but it stuck with me because it said it had it was about accurate medical diagnosis, and it showed like a box saying like 75% accuracy or something, and then doctors with AI, and the box was a little bit higher, like a little bit more accurate, and then it just said AI by itself, and it was higher in both of them, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is like there's like really good at pattern recognition, like what my wife theoretically does for the government for a living. When we're not in shutdown, is reading, contracts and making sense of them and changing contracts. Dude, like that whole, like she even is aware. She's like, I think my job's going to get taken by AI one day, and I think she's right.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're going to have to get through those bumpy parts to get to like a. But I also do agree with you, Bronwyn, that there'll be more emphasis placed on things not with AI, right? That's why my retirement plan doesn't involve computers. It involves art.
I do think that during the inflection point, we are seeing corporations, entities go to the extreme and make the move to get ahead of the curve. And I think we will see somewhat of a snap back into some sort of balance of normalcy on this first wave. But then I would also agree with you, Derek, is, the first wave is sort of happening in technology. We're going to see subsequent waves that are happening throughout various knowledge worker industries as the apps get cobbled together to replace those jobs. And so this is going to be
some sections of the medical field, like radiology, looking at x-rays. Oh man, legal, the law firm, like what makes
I
a
would
good
not
lawyer? Reading and comprehending. What is AI good at? Reading and comprehending.
Yeah, if there's lawyers out there, boy, and you're not getting familiar with this technology, you need to think again and get real familiar with it in a hurry. All right, let's go to our final story because time is a-wasting. The final story for today is the security paradox of local LLMs. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. The story leads off with this. If you are running a local LLM for privacy and security, you need to read this. Our research on GPT OSS 20 Bill, which is a 20 billion model of GPT that's portable for constrained GPU environments, shows they're much more prone to being tricked than frontier models. When attackers prompt them to include vulnerabilities, local models comply with up to 95% success rate. Just off that first bit of that story, it doesn't surprise me a bit. What do we technically know about local models? I mean, I can do my speech. I'll do my speech. What the heck?
Do your speech.
Local models that are made available for constrained GPU environments, such as your home gaming rig or some smaller server, are quantized models by default. What that means is that in the model weights, typically when they train a model on a frontier model, the number literally that they're using in the vector for the models is typically going to be a 32-bit number. And it's going to be a 32-bit floating point number. A 32-bit floating point number in good old computer science and operating system fundamentals consists of usually an 8-bit integer portion and a 24-bit floating point portion in that entire 32 bits. The very first step in quantizing a model is just to chop off the floating point portion of that vector, thus reducing that 32-bit word down to 8 bits and shrinking the model vector requirements accordingly. What does that give you? That gives you a model that can run in a much smaller memory footprint. And that is the situation when you are bringing models down to constrained GPU environments. You are limited by the amount of video RAM on that particular GPU board that you're targeting. And so you have to cut down the model somehow. Quantization is the most common way that you are cutting down that model. There may be other parts of the model that are lobotomized, so to speak, as well in that process. The net result is simply this. The model becomes less granular and less capable as we quantize it and reduce it down in size, while retaining the majority of its functionality. That's the kind of idea here. Other thoughts on that?
Well, I know with the frontier providers, one of the things that's frustrating is the black box syndrome, because they know what's in their model, no one else does. They know what kind of support, infrastructure, guardrails, etc. they've built in. And if you're using a local LLM, if you've set it up for your business or for your personal use or whatever, you're not going to have not just the resources GPU wise, but you're not going to have the resources to build up that kind of cage to keep your LLM from doing things it should not have.
Well, that's true. The safety and guardrails aspect is definitely there. If you're going to roll your own, it's up to you to put the guardrails in around that model. You're absolutely correct, Bronwyn. And okay, let's put it in the context of vibe coding, which this article actually kind of alludes to. And if you're doing AI assisted coding and you're using a local model that's, first of all, slightly less capable and has no guardrails, you're going to get vulnerable source code. But you know what? I get vulnerable source code out of Claude as well. So,
I think I get where the authors were coming from, but I think that they're making a little bit of a stretch, and that is they're kind of almost like assuming that the developer is going to do something truly stupid. And I mean, I'm not saying that, that won't be the case, but I mean, they're essentially assuming that however a developer is using a local model, that they're just going to allow unsanitized input from wherever to go in to generating what they're doing, and not without any concern about like what happens. Now, I mean, if you're building a system like in production for use, like say to summarize email, and you're using a local model, then yeah, I think that the risk is there no matter what LLM you're using. And sure, to Joel's point, I think that the local ones are going to have a little bit less safeguards, but like, I don't know. When I first saw the headline for this story, I thought like, oh my God, did somebody actually figure out how to make open weight models like execute code somehow? But that's not what's really happening here.
It's a little bit misleading. Now, here's the other thing, and just a bit of a shameless plug here. Later this month, I think it's on November the 25th, I'm actually going to do a webcast for IONS Research. I'm an IONS faculty member. I'm going to do a webcast on AI-assisted coding. So I'll actually be talking about this topic in a little bit more depth. But one of the points that I think both, well, at least Derek made, and I think Bronwyn was alluding to, was it's all in the prompting. If you go to a model, and I don't care what model it is, if it's a quantized model or if it's a frontier model or whatever, and you say, hey, model, write me a Python Flask app to do X function, the model will do that, but it will choose the path of least resistance, which may include security vulnerabilities. If you go to that model and you prompt it with, write me a Python Flask application, but be conscious of security flaws as detailed in the OWASP top 10, blah, 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 right? You give the model some context around the security precautions that you want, the model will comply. It will try to give you more secure code. So as is so common with LLMs in general, it is all in the prompting. If you prompt it well, you'll usually get better results.
Wait, which IDE allows you to use a local model instead of paying for tokens or credits or whatever?
Oh, I mean,
several
really,
of them.
because you can just open AI.
Not any of the popular ones though, right? Like VS Code, you can't hook it up to a local LLM. You got to use Copilot, right? Or
Misty,
Claude Code, like,
LM Studio.
Yeah, okay. So that's a little bit different than the IDE, right? Like an IDE environment.
Oh,
and so,
sorry. Never mind.
Yeah, and so I guess that's what I'm saying from a developer point of view. I mean, I I'm sure they could use a local model. Like you could definitely work it out to where it's in your workflow to do development. But I mean, it's just so easy to pay. What is it, $20 a month or whatever? 30 bucks
Right,
a month.
and you're
The-
gonna
the
be
problem
better off
is-
ultimately.
Yeah, but the problem
Attack number 2 that's referenced in this article actually is really straight to my point. They call the attack immediate remote code execution via cognitive overload. Well, you gave it confusing directives in the prompt. Of course, it's going to give you garbage code.
Or an attacker was able to somehow get that prompt into there without you noticing, and that's
I'm
where
sorry,
I thought it was a little bit of a
Brahman,
stretch.
Yeah, Brahman, you had a point that you were trying to make there.
It's probably about
Yeah, basically
privacy.
it comes down to whether it's again an amplification of what we've been dealing with already. Computers are always going to do what you ask them to do, what you tell them to do, not what you want them to do. And yeah, so there's the assumption that, oh, if I go and I have a computer write code for me, an LLM or whatever, then it's going to write it well. Again, forgetting the fact that a lot of the training was done off of bad code and chat areas where people were trying to solve different technical problems and posted flawed code. But again,
Well, it
I'm
goes
so
back to
glad-
that. Yeah.
I'm so glad I'm not in the development world anymore, because while I beat my head over and over again against management that said, no, just push it out faster, and we'll test it in production. And there's a reason why I have so much gray, and why you don't have any hair at all, right?
Your data poisoning comment, which is really what that is pertinent, right? I mean, the models are still being trained on internet source code, okay, without regard to what the quality of that data is. And as we've said before, the internet has been enshittified for some time, and so there's a lot of garbagey code out there. Such as life. Hey, I think that makes a good time to wrap up this episode. What do you think?
Works for me.
Well, everybody, thanks for joining us again for another exciting back and forth good time on AI security ops. We will see you on the next episode. Keep safe, keep prompting, and just remember that LLM is always going to do what you tell it to do. Bye-bye.